In the old city library, where rows of worn-out books held centuries of dust and stories long forgotten, worked a humble librarian named Adam. He loved the silence, the smell of paper, and the feeling that he was a guardian of knowledge. Visitors were few, especially in the evening hours when the sun had already set, and the library was plunged into twilight. One day, while sorting books in the farthest corner, where even the most diligent readers rarely ventured, Adam stumbled upon something strange. A book without a title lay on the bottom shelf, covered in a thick layer of dust. Its leather cover looked unusual, smooth, as if new, yet radiating an inexplicable sense of antiquity. Intrigued, he picked up the book and blew off the dust. It was heavy, as if something more than just pages were hidden inside. Adam ran his fingers over the cover, expecting to find a title or an author's name, but the surface was completely smooth. Only on the spine were faint, barely discernible worn-out symbols, but they were so eroded that reading them was impossible. Carefully opening the first page, the librarian found it blank. As were the second and third. He flipped further and suddenly noticed strange symbols, as if scratched onto the paper. They resembled no alphabet he knew, yet there was something eerie about their symmetry, as if a hidden meaning lurked within these lines. At that moment, the lights in the reading hall flickered and then went out completely. Adam shuddered and looked around. The library windows reflected only darkness, with no sign of the streetlights beyond. The silence was broken by a dull thud. Something heavy had fallen from a shelf at the far end of the hall. "Is anyone there?" he called, but there was no answer. A sickly unease settled in his chest. His heartbeat quickened. He shut the book and hurried toward the exit, trying not to look back. As he passed the shelves, for a brief moment, he thought he saw someone watching him from between the books. Or was it just a trick of the light? That night, Adam had no idea that this discovery would change his life forever. That night, Adam couldn't sleep. The mysterious symbols from the book kept flashing in his mind, pulsing as if alive. Every time he closed his eyes, they appeared again, burning into his thoughts. At one point, he decided to take out his notebook and tried to sketch them, but his hand trembled, and the symbols came out distorted, as if refusing to be copied. When he finally fell asleep, he had a dream. The library was cloaked in twilight, its shelves stretching into infinite darkness, while thick fog swirled outside the windows. Shadows moved among the bookshelves. They were formless, yet something about them felt alive. They whispered, but their words were incomprehensible. He approached one of the shelves and saw himself. His own silhouette, standing in the same position, holding the same book. The double slowly raised his head, and Adam froze. His reflection smiled. But it wasn't his smile. At that moment, he woke up, gasping for air, his body drenched in cold sweat. The room was filled with a strange smell, a mix of old paper and something damp. His heart pounded wildly in his chest. And then he heard the knocking. Weak, yet persistent. Someone was scratching at his apartment door. Adam slowly got out of bed, approached the door, and pressed his eye against the peephole. No one was there. He held his breath, listening. The corridor outside was completely silent. But just as he turned to walk away, the knocking came again, this time from the other side of the room. He slowly turned around. On his desk, amid a pile of papers, the very same book had opened on its own. Adam couldn't move. His gaze was fixed on the book, whose pages were flipping by themselves, as if an invisible hand was searching for something important. The air smelled of damp paper and dust, but now there was something else, a faint metallic tang. As he stepped closer, he noticed that the book was no longer blank. On the page where it had stopped, several words had appeared. They were written in English, but strangely distorted. "Can you see already?" Adam recoiled. At that moment, outside his window, there was a faint scratching sound, like nails dragging across the glass. His apartment was on the 5th floor. Taking a deep breath, he gathered his courage and looked outside. There was nothing but the black void of the night. And yet, the feeling of being watched didn't leave him. Looking back down at the book, he saw that the words had changed. Now it read, "Tomorrow, you will meet them." Them? Who were they? Adam snapped the book shut, but he knew it wouldn't be that easy to get rid of it. Something inside him whispered, his life would never be the same. That night, he never fell back asleep. Lying in the darkness, he listened to every sound, dreading the return of that scratching noise. And when the first rays of sunlight broke through the curtains, he realized that he was actually looking forward to tomorrow, not knowing what terrified him more, the book or his own imagination. The following day, Adam tried to go about his life as if nothing had changed. He went to work at the library as usual, his routine now a dull attempt to suppress the growing unease inside him. But the book, and the cryptic message it held, never left his thoughts. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was lurking just beyond his perception, waiting for him to acknowledge it. As the evening approached, he found himself unable to focus on anything. The air around him felt charged with a strange energy, as if the world itself were holding its breath. He tried to read, to immerse himself in the mundane, but the pages in front of him seemed to blur. The words danced, then froze, then distorted into symbols. His hand shook involuntarily. At that moment, the knocking came again. This time, Adam didn't hesitate. He leaped out of his chair and rushed toward the door, his heart pounding in his chest. The corridor was empty. No one was there. Yet, through the crack in the door, he saw something that made his blood run cold, a shadow, long and thin, stretching across the hallway. It was as if the darkness itself had come to life, moving and pulsing with an unnatural rhythm. His breath caught in his throat. Without thinking, he opened the door, only to find the hallway completely still and silent. The shadow was gone. Confused, Adam turned back to the library. But as he did, he noticed something that made his heart skip a beat. The book was gone. It wasn't on the desk anymore. It wasn't on the shelves. It had vanished. A cold sweat broke out on his brow. Was he losing his mind? Had he imagined the whole thing? But then, something caught his eye, a scrap of paper, small and crumpled, lying on the floor. He picked it up, his fingers trembling. On it, written in the same distorted letters as before, was another message. "They are closer than you think." His mind raced, the words feeling like a hammer pounding against his skull. Who were they? What did they want with him? That night, Adam couldn't sleep. The feeling of being watched had intensified, creeping into every corner of his apartment. The scratching sound had returned, though now it was louder, closer, more insistent. It was as if whatever it was, whatever they were, was slowly closing in on him. Around midnight, Adam heard the knocking once more, this time louder, more forceful. It echoed through the apartment, filling the air with an oppressive weight. His body moved on its own accord, propelled by some force he couldn't control. He knew what he had to do. He reached for the book. The moment his fingers touched it, a sudden wave of vertigo hit him. The room spun around him, and he felt himself being pulled into the book, as if the pages themselves were alive, opening a portal to something far darker than he had ever imagined. The world around him blurred and shifted. He was no longer in his apartment. He was in the library. But it wasn't the same library. The shelves were twisted, the books contorted into grotesque shapes, their covers stretching like faces frozen in agony. And then, from the shadows, they appeared. The creatures were humanoid in shape but entirely formless, their outlines shifting and flowing like liquid shadows. They had no faces, no eyes, but somehow, Adam could feel their gaze burning into him. Their presence filled the room with an unbearable sense of dread. One of them stepped forward, its form bending and undulating. It raised a hand, an impossibly long, clawed appendage, and pointed at him. "You've seen us," a voice echoed in Adam's mind. It wasn't spoken aloud, but felt as though it came from within him, a part of his very thoughts. "You've opened the door. And now, you will come with us." Adam tried to speak, but no words came out. His mouth felt like it was filled with sand. He tried to move, but his body was paralyzed, frozen in place by an unseen force. The creatures surrounded him, their forms shifting and swirling, moving closer and closer. Adam could feel his heart racing, every beat a deafening drum in his ears. Then, just as suddenly as they had appeared, they were gone. Adam stumbled backward, his body crashing against one of the twisted bookshelves. The room around him began to dissolve, and he found himself back in his apartment, panting, drenched in sweat. The book was still in his hands. But something had changed. He wasn't alone anymore. In the following days, Adam could feel the presence of the creatures everywhere. He would catch glimpses of them out of the corner of his eye, shifting shadows, distorted figures lurking just beyond his vision. His sleep was plagued with nightmares, each one more vivid and terrifying than the last. The words in the book became clearer, more urgent. "The door is open. You are ours now." He couldn't escape them. No matter how far he ran, they were always there, just out of reach, always watching, always waiting. And then, one morning, Adam noticed something strange. A mark, faint but undeniable, had appeared on his wrist. It looked like a symbol, similar to the ones in the book. It burned when he touched it, and it was growing, spreading like ink on water. He realized, with a cold rush of horror, that the creatures had claimed him. He had opened the door, and now they would never let him go. And as he looked at the mark, he heard the whisper once more, louder than ever. "You belong to us now."